October 8, 2022, 06:15 local time. The Kerch Strait Bridge connecting Russia to occupied Crimea. Surveillance cameras captured the moment. A massive explosion tore through the road section. Fuel tanks on an adjacent railway bridge ignited. Flames reached heights visible for kilometers. Within hours, satellite imagery confirmed extensive damage. This was the first documented attack on Russia's most strategically vital infrastructure link. 17 months later, July 17, 2023, Maritime drones struck again. Two separate incidents, two different methods, both targeting the same critical choke point. This is what verified evidence tells us. The Crimean bridge, officially called the Kerch Strait Bridge, spans 19 kilometers connecting Taman Peninsula to Crimea. Completed in 2018, despite international opposition, the structure carried both road and rail traffic. Russian logistics into Crimea depended heavily on this crossing. Military supplies, civilian goods, fuel, and personnel all flowed across these lanes. Estimated cost exceeded $3 billion. Symbolic value exceeded any monetary figure. When the October explosion occurred, multiple cameras documented the event from different angles. The blast created a gap in the roadway, collapsing one section entirely. According to Russian officials, the explosion originated from a truck bomb. Investigative reports identified the vehicle and traced its route. Ukrainian officials made no immediate claim, but suggested Russian security failures. What actually caused the detonation remains partially disputed, though the truck theory gained support from analyzed footage. The railway bridge fire proved equally dramatic. Fuel tanks aboard a freight train ignited, creating an inferno that burned for hours. Russian authorities reported 3 people killed, the train driver and passengers in a nearby vehicle. Satellite imagery from commercial providers showed the road bridge gap and scorched railway section. Traffic halted completely. The strategic impact became immediately apparent. Russia maintained only 3 major supply routes into Crimea. The bridge represented the newest, most capable, and symbolically most important. The ferry crossing offered limited capacity, and routes through occupied Ukrainian territory faced constant interdiction threats. Losing bridge capacity meant logistics bottlenecks. Which factor was most critical in this operation? Intelligence failure, security gaps, or innovative tactics? Analysis of both incidents reveals different tactical approaches. The October attack, if indeed executed by Ukrainian forces, demonstrated ability to penetrate Russian security screening. Trucks crossing the bridge underwent inspection protocols. That an explosive-laden vehicle reached the bridge suggests either sophisticated concealment or security procedure failures. Russian authorities subsequently enhanced screening measures, implementing more rigorous checks. Traffic delays increased significantly. The psychological impact on drivers crossing the bridge became documented in social media posts and news reports. The repair timeline demonstrated Russian engineering capacity under pressure. According to official Russian statements, limited road traffic resumed within days. Full repair completion took months. Satellite tracking showed construction equipment arrival, temporary support structures, and gradual restoration. By December 2022, both road lanes operated, though with weight restrictions. The railway section required less repair time, with freight traffic resuming sooner than full automobile access. Fast forward to July 17, 2023. Early morning hours. Explosions reported on the bridge. This time, Ukrainian sources openly acknowledged the operation. Maritime drones, specifically uncrewed surface vessels loaded with explosives, struck the structure. Video footage verified by open-source analysts showed at least one detonation. Damage appeared less severe than October, but still required repairs. Russian air defense and naval forces had 9 months to prepare for potential follow-up attacks. That maritime drones successfully reached the bridge raised questions about defensive countermeasures. The Black Sea maritime domain had seen increasing drone activity. Both sides employed various uncrewed platforms. Ukrainian forces demonstrated particular innovation in maritime drone development and deployment. These vessels, guided by satellite navigation and remote operators, could travel significant distances while maintaining low profiles difficult for radar detection. Have you seen the satellite images from these strikes? Check the sources linked in description. The tactical evolution between October and July demonstrates adaptation. October's truck bomb, if that was indeed the method, required infiltrating ground-based security. July's maritime approach exploited a different vulnerability vector. Russian forces responded to the truck threat with enhanced ground screening. They apparently underestimated or inadequately prepared for maritime approaches. Coastal defense systems focus primarily on larger vessels and aerial threats. Small, semi-submerged drones present unique detection challenges. Following the July attack, documented Russian responses included increased naval patrols near the bridge, deployment of barrier systems in the water, and additional air defense positioning. Commercial satellite imagery showed these defensive adaptations. The strategic calculation behind targeting the bridge repeatedly makes tactical sense. Every disruption forced logistics rerouting, created delays, and imposed costs. Beyond material damage, psychological effects rippled through Russian military and civilian populations. Confidence in critical infrastructure security degraded. Insurance costs for commercial traffic reportedly increased. The perception of vulnerability carried strategic weight. Does this pattern indicate a shift in Ukrainian strategy toward critical infrastructure targeting? Throughout the conflict, Ukrainian forces demonstrated increasing capability and willingness to strike deep into Russian-held territory. The bridge attacks fit within this broader pattern. Long-range drones hit airfields, fuel depots, and command facilities. Maritime drones targeted Russian naval vessels in port. The operational tempo suggested systematic campaign rather than isolated incidents. Comment your analysis. From an engineering perspective, completely destroying the Kerch Bridge would require enormous explosive force. The structure was built with redundancy and resilience. Damaging it enough to disrupt traffic temporarily proved achievable with much less force. The October attack succeeded in creating a gap requiring repair. The July attack caused damage necessitating inspection and partial closure. Neither resulted in complete structural failure, but both achieved operational disruption. The economic costs extended beyond repair expenses. Every day of reduced capacity meant delayed shipments, rerouted traffic, and economic inefficiency. Russian businesses operating in Crimea faced uncertainty. Tourism, already impacted by the conflict, suffered additional setbacks. The bridge carried symbolic importance for Russian annexation of Crimea. Attacks on it challenged that narrative directly. Russian President Putin personally oversaw the bridge's construction and opening. He drove a truck across it during the inauguration ceremony. State media portrayed it as triumph of Russian engineering and political will. Attacks transformed that symbol into a vulnerability. Russian officials promised retaliation after each incident. Documented Russian missile strikes against Ukrainian cities intensified following the October bridge explosion. Whether these represented direct retaliation or would have occurred regardless remains analytically uncertain. The correlation was noted by multiple intelligence sources, though causation proves harder to establish definitively. Ukrainian officials frame bridge attacks as legitimate military operations against occupation infrastructure. International law perspectives on striking logistics, infrastructure, and occupied territories vary. Russian claims that these constituted terrorism found little international traction. Western governments generally avoided direct comment on Ukrainian responsibility while noting the bridge's military logistics role. The repair costs accumulated. Russian authorities allocated funds for enhanced security, damage restoration, and defensive systems. Exact figures remain classified, though infrastructure experts estimated costs in hundreds of millions of dollars. These funds diverted from other potential military or civilian uses. Opportunity costs matter in protracted conflicts. If you follow verified military analysis, type verified. The technical specifications of the maritime drones used in July remain partially unknown. Ukrainian sources released limited information for operational security reasons. Open-source analysts estimated sizes, explosive payloads, and ranges based on available footage and known Ukrainian drone development programs. These platforms represented significant technological achievement for a nation that had minimal maritime drone capability before the conflict. Russia's defensive challenges multiplied. Protecting a 19-kilometer bridge spanning open water from multiple threat vectors requires substantial resources. Air defense systems must cover the entire span. Naval patrols must maintain constant vigilance. Underwater barriers can impede some approaches, but complicate legitimate maritime traffic. Electronic warfare systems can potentially disrupt drone guidance, but determined adversaries adapt. The cost of defense often exceeds the cost of attack, a fundamental asymmetry. The railway traffic patterns showed interesting changes documented through satellite analysis. After the October fire, freight volumes initially dropped significantly. Gradual restoration occurred over subsequent months. By mid-2023, railway traffic appeared to approach pre-attack levels based on train frequency counts from imagery. The July attack again disrupted patterns, though less severely than October. Passenger vehicle traffic proved harder to quantify precisely. Russian authorities released selective statistics. Independent verification relied on analysis of traffic camera footage, satellite imagery showing vehicles on the bridge, and reports from travelers. All sources suggested reduced traffic volumes compared to pre-attack baselines, with periodic fluctuations based on security situations and repair schedules. What tactical adaptation should we watch for next? Share your thoughts. Alternative logistics routes gained increased importance for Russia. The land corridor through occupied Ukrainian territory in Zaporizhia and Kherson Oblasts became more critical. Russian forces invested in upgrading roads and rail lines along these routes. However, these paths faced their own vulnerabilities. Ukrainian long-range strike systems could target them. Partisan activity posed additional threats. The ferry crossing between Krasnodar Krai and Crimea expanded operations, but offered limited capacity compared to the bridge. Strategically, the bridge attacks demonstrated Ukraine's expanding deep strike capabilities. The operational reach extended to targets Russian planners apparently assumed were secure. This forced Russian defensive resource allocation over wider areas. Forces and equipment devoted to bridge protection could not be employed elsewhere. The cumulative effect of such operations stretches defensive capabilities. The propaganda dimensions deserve acknowledgement. Russian media initially downplayed damage from both attacks, then pivoted to showcasing rapid repairs as demonstrations of resilience. Ukrainian sources celebrated strikes as victories. Western media covered incidents extensively, often with analysis of strategic implications. The information space became its own battleground, with each side attempting to shape narratives. Documented evidence provides the most reliable foundation. Commercial satellite imagery offers independent verification. Video footage from multiple sources allows cross-referencing. Official statements from both sides, while potentially biased, establish minimum acknowledged facts. Open-source intelligence analysts compile and verify available data. This triangulated approach builds the most accurate picture possible, given inherent wartime information constraints. This analysis is based on available open-source information and official statements as of July 2023. Some technical details about attack methods remain classified or disputed. Exact casualty figures and comprehensive damage assessments may not be publicly available. Skyfall warfare aims to provide fact-based analysis while acknowledging the fog of war. The documented strategic impact spans multiple dimensions. Russia's primary logistics link to Crimea suffered two separate attack incidents. Both required repairs and defensive adaptations. Ukrainian forces demonstrated multiple strike vectors against critical infrastructure. The bridge's vulnerability became established fact rather than theoretical possibility. Ongoing defensive requirements impose continuous costs. What does verified evidence tell us about effectiveness? Attacks successfully damaged critical infrastructure and disrupted logistics flow. How have tactics evolved based on documented incidents? Ukrainian forces employed different attack methods, suggesting systematic approach to finding defensive vulnerabilities. What patterns in real strikes indicate future operations? Continued pressure on Russian logistics networks and critical infrastructure appears likely based on demonstrated capabilities and strategic logic. Real warfare, real analysis. Skyfall warfare. Subscribe to Skyfall Warfare for documented analysis of real aerial warfare and strategic strikes. Sources in description.